Hi, this is Lauren following up with Module 3 for my response post. And I thought I would just maybe go through each individual person from our discussion board and maybe comment and provide some feedback and just some general comments that I thought were interesting. Natalie, after reviewing your topic or your video, and I know that your topic is first generation students as well, knowing that we have the same topic but just in different environments, so I was specifically looking at those students who are in the four-year college setting, and you mentioned that you were more at the community college, or your interviews were at the community college setting. I was actually kind of interested to see what the age range of your students were, really just because you talked about how in-depth your interviews or your participants got and how long they talked, and I don't know if it's because my students are just that young, traditional age, 19, age kid student that is in this college setting, but they talk fast and they did not interview for 30 minutes. So I felt like I had to keep doing interviews to kind of get some pretty substantial comments. They weren't as in-depth and detailed as maybe an older student is, a non-traditional type student. So I would be super curious to see what the age difference is in our participants after hearing your reflection on your interviewees. Some of the challenges that you mentioned that they had were a little bit different than some of the challenges you mentioned. Transportation was a big challenge for some of your students, and really it was more of the time management, study skills kind of challenge for the students that I interviewed. So I was interested to hear that difference, and I don't know that transportation came up at all, other than the fact that some of the students maybe were originally out-of-state students, and so dealing with the back and forth with home and that being a challenge in a sense that they were far away from home, but not necessarily kind of a daily challenge. And the students here talked really highly about support networks, and you mentioned that yours were maybe a little bit more minimal, but maybe it's because they all kept stressing involvement and finding a network and staying involved, and so that was just an interesting difference between those students, maybe the difference between the 2 and the 4-year students that I thought I would comment on. And Greg, I knew that you were doing the homeschool students. I'm glad to hear that they were really responsive in your emails after we worked on that. It was hard. I think I would have to agree with you. It was really hard not to stray from the script. So, when you were hearing what they were saying and you remember reading it in the literature review, or you remember kind of doing that research or writing about that, something that maybe would have aligned with a theory, and when the students were saying those things, it was kind of like that light bulb moment went off, and I would have to agree it was kind of hard not to kind of provide them with that reassurance or kind of continue the conversation versus just ask the question, transcribe, and kind of be that true interviewee versus someone engaged in a conversation. So I did feel like that was a fairly difficult part, maybe because what they had to say was so interesting, and it was also reassuring that you had a good group of students or a good group of participants that were kind of lining up with the research, which was kind of cool. And John, I know that you talked a little bit about the peer support that kind of comes into play when your students when you're looking at the test anxiety levels. And I just I'm not sure if anybody else noticed this, but I thought it was interesting that peer support, or at least for my students, the peer support kind of helped. You said that kind of helps. Research showed that kind of helped talk them down from their anxiety, but the parents kind of helped to rile them back up, if you will. And I wonder if that is a difference between the first generation student and and just a student whose parents have gone to college, so maybe that contributes some to that anxiety, that the parents are putting a little bit more pressure, where my students weren't necessarily feeling any of that pressure, and actually some of them were feeling more pressure internally, I think, pressure to succeed or pressure to feel like they were adequate enough to be here. So it was just interesting. I wonder how that anxiety role actually flips for a student maybe in that's a first generation college student. So excited to hear that everyone's interviews went well. And hopefully I am on the right track as well. So looking forward to hearing everyone's feedback.